I'm alive again. Welcome back, everyone, to Jit Geek. I'm your host, JG, and today we're going to be reviewing House of the Dragon Season 1, Episode 2. Before we start, though, I just want to give a quick thanks to those that have watched the Episode 1 review. If you liked it, thanks for however long you've watched the review for, and thanks to all that gave a like to the post and to the new subscribers. It's all appreciated. It's always hard starting a new channel and building a community, but we've got to start somewhere. So just appreciate all the love and support, and let's hope it continues. I think with that said, let's roll on to the review. Right then. This is a bit different than what we had last time. I think last time we didn't have the opening credits, so this is interesting. And from what I've read about the opening credits, it's all about, so it should be, the Targaryen family tree, all the way from old Valyria, which is spoken about in the episode, and all the way to the different kings and queens. So by the looks of it, that there is Jaehaerys's crown. I guess before we start, it's probably worth mentioning there may be some spoilers for this episode, spoilers for episode 1 if you haven't watched that, of House of the Dragon, spoilers for Game of Thrones all the way through, and potential spoilers for the A Song of Ice and Fire books, which is the Game of Thrones books. Right, let's just get through this opening credits then. We didn't have this actually in episode 1, which is so that's there. That's interesting. That's on the pendant that Daemon gave Rhaenyra in the first episode, the one that he hooked around her neck the first time we were introduced to Daemon. So that's interesting. Now I wonder if these are going to adapt as the story continues. Nice to see the big names there: George R.R. Martin, Miguel Sapochnik, and Ryan Condal. For those that don't know, Miguel Sapochnik is the director of Game of Thrones episodes such as Battle of the Bastards, The Winds of Winter, Hard Home. I think he also did the Long Night as well, which has kind of put a dent in his armour, but he's got good credentials. And a bit of a spoiler actually about him, he won't be coming back for season 2, which is kind of a blessing, kind of a curse. I mean, from what I've read and heard and listened to, he's been up and down with this season. And I know he's great at spectacle, but I think the story and the dialogue and the storylines are coming from both Ryan Condal and George Martin. So I think he's just there for the spectacle and the big battles I expect. Right, let's just get through this. Oh, it's quite short actually. And then we go straight onto the House of the Dragon. Yeah. Okay. So that was interesting. Let's just see if we can get the... Oh, that's very interesting, and that's something I slightly overlooked, which is they've reused the Game of Thrones theme, which I suppose it ties in with the original seasons, but considering how badly that finished, and you'll all learn to understand how much of a negative opinion I have about season 7 and 8. The rest of it is either perfect television or is decent television, but season 7 and 8 completely ruined the show for me. Like, I can't really go back and watch previous seasons because I know it just all ends in season 8. Now, whilst this can be regarded as a standalone story, it still really all ends in season 8. And as I explained in my episode 1 review, one of my theories, and I've heard this dotted about elsewhere as well, is that because George is still writing The Winds of Winter and he's still looking to and planning to write a Dream of Spring, I think this will end in a season 7, 8 and potentially additional season reboot. Who knows though? We'll see. We can always hope and dream, I think. Maybe it's not a dream of spring, maybe it's a dream of a reboot. So interestingly that they used the same theme song. I'm sure really they probably should have gave it its own opening song just to kind of differentiate it, I guess, from the main Game of Thrones show. But nonetheless, it's still a banger. It's still a cracking opening anthem, and no, we're not allowed to skip it. So what do we have? We have opening with the Crabman and his desolation, by the looks of it, and what he does to some sort of sailors or seamen. That's quite that looks quite that looks quite interesting. Really interesting way to die. There is a good shot here in a moment. I think I've missed it. Oh, there we go. Yeah, there are some really good shots here, and the CGI looks really, really good in a few of these shots. Really brings out the destruction of what the Crabman is looking to do. I'm just going to actually check his name, because I know in my opening episode 1 review, House of the Dragon, Crabman. Oh, the Crab Feeder. Interesting name. We're going to still call him the Crabman because he's the Crabman. But I suspect by the end of this episode we will. Well, I know, but because I've watched it. But I suspect there will be plans for the Crab Feeder, for the Crabman, in future episodes. So we move swiftly from the beach to the King's Council again, with Rhaenyra resuming her role as the cupbearer, which again I think is a subtle way of bringing her into the politics and the strategy, and King Viserys is trying his best to really help Rhaenyra with her new role as heir, and get her to sit round the table and listen to the different opinions. And well, it sounds good, but I think Rhaenyra is a bit rebellious and would much rather be speaking her opinion. I don't think they weren't talking about much in this episode at the table, but interestingly, we've got the balls on the table, and by the looks of it, in Corlys's seat, he doesn't have his ball to indicate that he's ready for council. Actually, before we go on to the Corlys part, they do actually talk about, and again, I'm going to bring up his name, House of the Dragon, Kingsguard, because it's the Gold Cloaks. The Kingsguard it's the Gold Cloaks. Gold Cloaks, House of the Dragon. Anyway, the leader of the Gold Cloaks, who was the older guy who used to sit behind Viserys, apparently he passed, and our Scottish friend on the left here, who has taken over as the just trying to find his name. No, it's not the Gold Cloaks. No, they definitely are the Kingsguard. I've got this wrong. Anyway. House of the Dragon, Kingsguard. I want to get his name right. Because Harold Westling, I did say it was a Westerling in the episode 1 review. It's Harold Westling has now taken over as leader of the Kingsguard, head of the Kingsguard. He's a brute by the looks of it, and I think it's interesting now that he's had to step up, and as we will see in a few moments, the impact on that part of the storyline, interestingly. So, resuming the Corlys piece, Corlys Valyrian looks like he's stormed in. He doesn't look too happy because of the crab feeder, and he's decimated another ship. And he's just come storming in, no fucks given, no manners, no ball on the table to incite that he's ready for council, and he's just giving it loads at the king. And by the looks of the council, no one's like, apart from Otto, I mean, he's trying to do his best to calm the situation. Viserys looks cool as a cucumber by the looks of it, though, and really isn't taking any offence nor any action. I think the last thing that the king really wants to do is to drum up war and incite a lot of anger in the free cities. And what he does go on to mention is that he has sent out envoys to other three free cities to try and negotiate some sort of a peace deal or to calm things with the Triarchy. But even Beesbury says they've never been to war with the free cities, and why should they start now? And I kind of agree. I think war should really be the last thing that anyone wants. But the hot-headedness here of Rhaenyra, the hot-headedness of her, she turns and is basically like, why don't we just nuke them? I.e., why don't we just send the dragons and dragon back, and it's a show of force. So I thought that was an interesting kind of spin, and her butting in on the king's the king's council. Now, it looks like that Corlys Velaryon is on her side in this instance, and likes the fact that she's got a plan and she's doing something about it, and she's willing to take matters into her own hand. But the king isn't having any of it, and he knows she's spoken out of place in terms of the politics and the environment and the times here. The king knows she's spoken out of place there. I mean, Rhaenyra doesn't look too happy there about the reaction from King Viserys. So what they send her off to do is go and, because now Harold Westling has had to step up, as I said, her replacement is now there's now a selection party about her replacement, and Viserys sends her off to go and select that member of the Kingsguard who will look to protect her. So we roll straight into that scene then, and Otto Hightower looks like they've joined them. Kind can't quite make out, and I know other reviews have done a cracking job of identifying who these different houses are, but the main one, really, we'll get to the main one. But I do love the little statues, and they move the statues to indicate which house is being brought forward. I'm not really too concerned about the others, apart from when we get to... Oh, Rhaenys is there looking over. I wonder why. I don't know. Maybe she's bored. Maybe she's got nothing else to do but drink wine. She looks a little bit like Cersei Lannister there. So Rhaenyra hears a few options, and it's clear that she is unhappy with the options available to her, because they haven't got any combat experience, which is only fair, because this member of the Kingsguard, this member of the Kingsguard is going to be the one that's going to be protecting her. So if I was in her shoes, I'd be doing exactly the same thing, and looking for someone who could physically protect me from any foe, basically. Sorry about this. It's better. Now, Otto at this point has said to Rhaenyra, and teaching her some politics here, which is to make sure that she thanks them for their loyal service and their time, and for stepping up as a member of the Kingsguard. Now, that symbol there, I know, is the symbol of House... Is it House Cole? Kristen Cole's house? That strapping young man. So the guy that took down Daemon Targaryen in the previous episode, it brings a smile to Rhaenyra's face, and the conversation that they have incites that Kristen Cole has had battle experience, and it just so happens that he's the one that took her favour in the previous episode at the tourney, and took down Daemon. And a great point from Otto here is bringing more a political standpoint to this, and saying, well, it's probably better off for the crown to have someone on the Kingsguard who has family connections with, other families that are well suited to helping the king in other ways as well, i.e. politically, and other powerful families. But Rhaenyra's having none of it, and she's more interested in her protection, the king's protection, and making sure that they are the best person for the job, as opposed to the best person for political gain. And really tells Otto, puts him in his place, which he doesn't particularly like. Now we move swiftly on to a fantastic, and we learn in the episode that this statue now, and this creation that Viserys is building, is old Valyria, and he explains that the top of the monument is where the most powerful the most powerful people used to live, because the source of the magic and the power was in the top of this city. I can't remember the word that they use, but there's a specific word that they use, and it's there at the top of this pyramid. It looks a bit like Marine from the books, where the power exists, and the closer they are to the power, the more magical they are, the stronger the magical abilities are. So I thought that was an interesting piece of lore from the books. But who do we have here? Alicent Hightower again, having another date. Well, we're going to call it a date. a meet up with Viserys, and I think she's just doing her piece to solidify the plans that Otto Hightower wants to put in place in terms of reconciling the king and making him feel better and cope with the passing of Queen Emma and the babe Balon. Now they exchange words about a. I mean, that shot there is beautiful. That is with the sun. They exchange words about a dragon, like a sculpted dragon. Drop it, and it drops on the floor. And by the looks of it, there, Viserys is looking quite distraught. And I've got a feeling that that sculpture is of Valyria the Black Dread, who actually prior to this season of House of the Dragon, in the lore, it was Viserys's dragon, but the dragon passed because he was hundreds of years old. Now that dragon actually belonged originally to Aegon the Conqueror, who flew from Old Valyria to Dragonstone, had the dream, which we understood last episode, which took him over to Westeros to conquer. So that just kind of ties up all of the kind of a nice neat thread across the different kings there. It's evident that Alicent and Viserys have formed quite a strong bond since the last time we saw them. The conversation's flowing a lot better. They're a lot easier with each other. It seems a lot more relaxed. She's not fidgeting with her nails and her fingers as well, which is interesting to see. And it looks like they're getting on very well. And I'm sure that will have a big impact going forward. But I think the premise here is, the bond is getting stronger and Viserys is enjoying her company by the looks of it. So we move from politics to a lovely shot of King's Landing with, what looks like the Sept in the middle. Yes, it's the Sept with the candles. Do feel for the poor soul who's had to light all them candles. It's a nice conversation here, but it's very politically driven by Alicent, who, knowing her father's plans and having spent secret time with Viserys, is still consoling Rhaenyra about she's the heir. Yes, your father's got to marry, but you're still the heir. So she's playing a bit of a double-eyed snake role here, and it's really interesting the politics that she plays. She's learning very quickly. She's been thrown into the deep end, into the Game of Thrones, and by the looks of it, obviously she's following her father's plans, but she's playing the Game of Thrones very well. Now she asks her to sit and light a candle, and they light one for her mother. And it's a sweet scene, and it's very beautiful in terms of the candles and the lighting and the emotion. It's quite an emotional, slow scene, and that probably goes for a lot. Probably the whole of this episode. Really, it's definitely a lot slower. Not so much happens compared with the first opening episode, which was fantastic. You couldn't have got off to a better start. But I think these are typical middle of the season Game of Thrones episodes, what we used to know and love seasons 1 to 4, where there was a lot of walking, a lot of talking, a lot of political storylines building, and the build-up paid off in Game of Thrones, and I just hope that this build-up pays off later on in the season as well. Yeah, very, very emotional scene this is, and they do talk about their mothers and the loss of the babe as well, and you can tell that Rhaenyra is still very emotional about the whole thing, and what we'll see later on in the episode is that it's affected her relationship with her father, because I don't think it's quite awkward, because I don't think either of them know how to talk about it to one another. Yeah, and this friendship, like I said in my opening review, I think it's such a great change from the books, to make them best friends. It just adds that real an additional layer to the whole politics and the relationships and the storyline. I mean, some of the scenery in these episodes is just absolutely gorgeous. Now we move on to Viserys talking with Rhaenys and Corlys. What's interesting is he was quite hot-headed when he came into the throne room earlier, but I think he's been knocked down a peg or two once by Otto with a great line about having a seat at the table doesn't make you an equal. Equally, though, he knows he was out of line and he wants to make amends. And he also wants to get the king on his side so he can do something about the shipping lane with the crab feeder and the chaos that he's bringing to the seas and the shores. Now, I think the premise of the scene is about Corlys suggesting that Viserys marries his younger daughter, and whilst it sounds a bit dodgy, being the daughter's 12 years old, it in kind of the world of Westeros and Game of Thrones and in the show, that's not really there's nothing new there. So they discuss about the wedding as a potential match, and I think out of courtesy, Viserys has to not accept it full stop, but accept the offering of talking to Laena, which is their daughter. Which I think we had a shot of Laena with like the silver wig in the opening episode. Yeah, it doesn't look very comfortable at all at the that proposal, and I think it's evident because she's 12 years old and he's starting to develop this relationship with Alicent as well, Alicent Hightower, who we've seen in a couple of scenes back. Now, as I said, the relationship between Rhaenyra and Viserys, this scene sums up their current relationship to the T. It's awkward. They don't really know how to discuss the death of Emma and the baby Balon. They don't know what to say to each other. They don't know how to support each other emotionally. And it's a shame, really, because they need to be there for each other. They need to be there to support each other through the loss. But it's evident because it's been, say, 6 months now since the passing of Emma and Balon. It's clear that they haven't been there for one another, but they're making small talk. It's obvious at the dinner table that you can hear the crickets and you can hear you could hear a pin drop. I was watching it again last night and you could hear a pin drop in this scene. And it's greatly done because it showcases the awkwardness and the state of their current relationship. And they make small talk, but I think equally, Rhaenyra discusses and tries to backtrack on what she suggested at the King's Council earlier. But I don't think Viserys is having none of it, really. And again, puts her down. Now, I thought this was... just try pause it at the right bit. That was an interesting shot. The unwrapping of Viserys' hand, where his finger got caught on the Iron Throne in the previous episode, I thought that was quite a subtle hint. And for those, spoiler warning, but for those that don't know, there is I think it's a theory, but there is, we'll call it a theory, in the books and in the lore. And I think I might have mentioned this in episode 1. When a king is cut by the Iron Throne, that ultimately means that that king is unworthy, and the more they get cut by the Iron Throne, the more unworthy they are. Now, this is Viserys' second injury from the throne, so that is just growing and growing, and this is starting to identify that he really isn't the king that the realm needs, and he isn't the best king for the job by the looks of it. I mean, he's been quite passive at the moment. He's not making a lot of decisions. Some of the decisions he has made haven't gone that way. We've seen Daemon talk to him and say he's weak and he's easily manipulated. But we can see that from what Otto's doing to him. I'm absolutely adamant that there is something going on between Otto and Maester Melos as well. And it's apparent again in this scene as well that they are in collusion. I'm sure they've got to be, and that will come out. That'll definitely come out. But we can see there was maggots there put onto the festering wound to see what they can do about it. And this is another point where Viserys brings up the marriage proposal from Velaryon. From Corlys Velaryon, sorry, and again you can see the kind of animosity and the distraught in his face because of the fact that she's 12 years old. But discussing it with Melos and Otto, they seem to be in collusion about Otto's plans, or as I mentioned last time, in their plans, I'm sure they're in collusion about getting Alicent into a spot as queen, mother of a new baby perhaps, and Otto into a more powerful position as Hand of the King. Now, as the scene progresses, they start to, and I say Otto and Melos start to steer the conversation away from marrying Laena Velaryon to consider other options. But we have probably the most awkward scene in the whole episode, or the whole show so far, I would say. And we're going to race through this because essentially it's a courtesy walk between Laena and Viserys. And Laena suggests that she'll give him sons, which is, again, really awkward to listen to. But, I mean, fair play to the showrunners in putting this in, and it's made it quite a... it's made an awkward scene, believable, and the pair of these here have brought this to life. But you can clearly see the pair of them are in an awkward position, and Laena talks about giving him sons and being the queen and developing the relationship, but it turns out that that's what Corlys wanted Laena to say to the king, not what she wants to say to the king, which is a good thing in my eyes. Now, by the looks of it, Rhaenyra is looking at the little conversation that her father and potential new queen candidate are having, and I would look as pissed off as she would if I was in her shoes, and knowing that as soon as he remarries, and she's all for him remarrying, as soon as he remarries and has another boy, it's likely that her heir, her status of heir to the Iron Throne is definitely going to be put in jeopardy. It's interesting, that painting. I think I was watching Glidus. I mean, Glidus has done some great Game of Thrones and House of the Dragon stuff so far. Check out Glidus if you haven't already. He mentioned that the painting, I'm sure it was Glidus, is of dragons having sex with Targaryens, which is evidence enough of where the whole blood of the dragon comes from. So I thought that was an interesting detail. But who do we have here? None other than the scorn, bitter queen who never was herself, Rhaenys, talking with Rhaenyra about their trying to wind up Rhaenyra really, and incite that men will never accept a female queen. And I think it's at this point she drops the line she did from I think it was from one of the opening trailers, that a man would rather see the realm burn than have a woman on the throne, which, come to think of it, by the books is what happens, i.e. a queen never sits the Iron Throne, or a Targaryen queen never sits the Iron Throne. And if we remove, I guess, seasons 7 and 8 from the equation as well, a queen never sat the Iron Throne there as well, whether that be Lannister, Baratheon, Targaryen. So, yeah, I don't really know about the burning part, but definitely a queen has never sat the Iron Throne by the law. I don't think, no, it hasn't. But it's clear that Rhaenyra is having none of it, and she can hold her own in this, and yeah, she's not biting to the bitterness that Rhaenys is dealing her here. So we come back to Alicent having another little date with Viserys, and she offers him a little present, and that present is none other than the dragon, which is which has been mended. Now you saw clearly from just a couple of scenes ago, she was there we go. She's back to being quite anxious, not so relaxed, messing with her fingernails, and I suspect that this is another plot from her father. This isn't something she's done off her own back, which just goes to show that she's been thrown in really at the deep end of the Game of Thrones, and she's just having to play her part. Now, whether the relationship is developing or whether she's just doing it for her father's political gain still remains to be seen in my eyes. I mean, it's a nice gesture in the eyes of Viserys, and he loves his geeky little hobbies, and she seems to be helping him with that. And they get interrupted by none other than, is it Otto? Yes, Otto comes in and interrupts them. So we're back. Oh, they just leave her in there, which is interesting to play with the models. Coy little look at her father that is as well. Like, I've done your dirty work, father. Now I want payment in the form of queenhood. Oh, I love the fact that the Dragon Keepers all only talk Valyrian, and we get the subtitles, and I just think it's a beautiful little subtle subtle addition to the show, and really sets it apart from. Well, it just adds that extra kind of book spin to it as well. Really going with book canon there. Now, as you can see by the subtitles here, a dragon egg was stolen from beneath one of the in the dragon pit, and it is revealed that none other than our mate Prince Daemon was the one that stole it. But he didn't just steal the dragon egg; he stole Balon's dragon egg, who was the was it the heir for a day that Daemon had suggested, his new nickname. But Melas is reading a scroll as well that not only confirms that he stole the egg, but he's got plans to marry a second wife, which is Targaryen tradition. I mean, Aegon the Conqueror had both of his sisters as two wives, and his new wife, Mysera, is pregnant with his child. So this is just infuriating the council. I mean, you can see Beesbury there is infuriated. The king looks infuriated. Otto looks infuriated. I mean, it doesn't take much for Otto to get infuriated about Daemon. As we saw in episode 1, he's really easily wound up by him. But they all look very concerned. Yeah, and I think all of this has come as a bit of a shock to the council. This is where it's revealed that the egg was Dreamfire's princess, which is which the show tells you, yeah, the same you chose for Prince Balon's cradle. So as I said, this is the baby that died in episode 1, the heir for a day, and it's just another stab. It's just another, wound that Viserys has got to take. Really, another piss take that Daemon is inciting and trying to infuriate the king. But I think really all of this is just in aid, and we'll probably learn a bit more, but it's just in aid to get his attention, because we all know that's all he wants. Now, Viserys steps up. I need to go and see him. I need to challenge him on all of this. But it's clear that Otto's having none of it, and wants to go in. Yeah, wants to go in the king's. Wants to go for the king instead. So he suits up. I mean, I don't. Yeah. Yeah, he's suiting up here, ready to go and challenge Daemon on Dragonstone. And you can they make a slight comment, Otto does, about Alicent's nails again being nervous. Now again, this ties into the fact that he's trying to push the Alicent Viserys relationship, and the more time she spends with him, it seems like the easier it's becoming and the more relaxed she is. But I think he kind of has her about it, i.e. why you're still messing with your nails, and it's just a sign of anxiety, I think. Now, who do we have here? None other than Criston Cole. I think one of his first duties as one of the members of the King's Guard is to escort Otto to Dragonstone with the rest of the team. And this castle just looks, oh my god, it looks as good as it did in seasons 7 and 8. I mean, look at that. And there's a scene in a moment we'll get. Is this it? No. Oh, look at that. That is one of the shots of the show so far. That's just glorious. And this part where they're descending up to Dragonstone and Daemon's team, because he's got the gold cloaks there, descending down, and the scenery here is just gorgeous. Now, Otto's armour doesn't really look that good, and in all fairness, I don't know why he's bought the maester, and I don't know why he's not wearing his helmet. So a couple of marks down there for because if he's going for battle, well, there again, I suppose if he's going to try and politically, use the political card first as opposed to all out war, he seems very keen on the calm approach first, and then perhaps because he's got the King's Guard with him, maybe then go for the battle as opposed to straight in there, blood and guts, rescue the egg, no more Daemon. It's clear that Daemon doesn't give a shit though, and he's just strolling out. New wife, pregnant, and I'll get to that. Egg in hand, doesn't give a damn, and Otto's basically just asking for it back. But it's clear that there's a great exchange. Yeah, it's clear that Daemon isn't giving it back because he doesn't want Otto. He doesn't want these. He wanted the king to come as per the scroll. Now, there was a great exchange between Criston Cole and Daemon, and again, Criston Cole gets one over on Daemon. There you go. That's where he gets one over on Daemon again. And he's like, yeah, very good, well played. But the premise here of the scene is ultimately, give me back the egg. And he's like, take it, it's yours, just come and get it. Now, I don't know why. I don't know why he makes no approach to go and get the egg. Oh yeah, swords are drawn now. He's had enough. Because Daemon, I'm sure this is that shot. That's the shot from the trailer where we see him extend the sword. So that's obviously prompted all of the King's Guard. But what do we have here? Long redneck boy, Caraxes, who looks absolutely phenomenal. I mean, that's CGI. That CGI puts Lord of the Rings and Wheel of Time and all other shows at the minute to shame. I mean, that just looks incredible. And you can see the fear on Otto's eyes as well. Another great shot there from Daemon. Now let me see if I can get the shot of the clouds moving. There you go. I mean, that for CGI, and then we see Syrax, look at that for another beautiful shot. Syrax strolling, and you can see, I'm sure actually in the trailers, Rhaenyra was not on the dragonback. I think they'd taken her out on via the special effects. Another great shot there. Yeah, I don't think she was on dragonback during the trailers, so they've added her in. But the Rhaenyra's just strolled up on dragonback, strolls through the King's Guard. Basically giving Daemon a what for, even says, this is my uncle, this is my castle, uncle. Yeah, this is my castle, you've angered your king. And Daemon's trying to obviously, claw back some honour here and say, this is a day of celebration, this is a day for my marriage, and Sarah's, pregnant with my child. But Rhaenyra's having none of this. He's stolen the egg. He's almost committed like blasphemy on the family. But obviously he wants it for his child. Now, what was interesting is, if we can get a shot of, they zoom in on Sarah here, and it's evident that she's either shocked of this news that she's pregnant and they're getting married, or she doesn't like it. But now they switch back to English. And essentially, Rhaenyra basically says, if you want Dragonstone and you want this egg, I'm here. strike me down now, kill me now, and you can have it all. And there is a point where, there is a point where he does consider, or he's thinking, she's got more balls than the blokes that have come on. She's got more, bigger balls than blokes standing behind her. And she's obviously shown them that this is how you get it done. Arrive on Dragonback, that's the best way to get something done. Why not? You can take it by force then. And then they have a nice little game of catch. And she gets the dragon head back. That little smirk there is like, yeah, I knew what I was doing. 1-up for Rhaenyra here. Nice subtle detail though about the cauldron. I thought that was good. But you can clearly see that Rhaenyra's smug about her victory over Daemon, especially using Dragonback as she suggested to Viserys in the opening King's Council, and Otto just looks pissed off with her and wonders why he didn't take up that idea in the first place. It'd save him a trip then, save him getting armoured off. She just strolls off on Dragonback. I mean, some of the scenery here again is just, the shots here are just brilliant again. And my God, the CGI just looks fantastic. It looks as good as seasons 6, 7 and 8 of Game of Thrones. And I've seen some of the Rings of Power, and it just infuriates me how bad the Rings of Power is. I mean, if you want me to do a review of episode 1 and 2 of Rings of Power, let me know in the comments below. Now, having suffered another loss, Daemon's infuriated, and by the looks of it, Mysara is as well. But we learn from this scene that she's not pregnant, they're not planning on getting married, and he was just doing it out of spite and to get some attention. We also learn that she's escaped slavery, Mysara has, and all she's asking for is freedom, basically. So she's never scared again. I mean, obviously, Daemon here is declaring his love for her and inciting that, although it was a ploy to get the attention of the king, that perhaps that these things could come true in time. Now that's the model that broke earlier on in the episode. So we're back to Viserys, and to be fair, this isn't the scene with Rhaenyra. This is with, and I forgot his name. I need to get his name up. Because in the books he plays a very interesting character. House of the Dragon cast. I should have this open. I'll have this open for episode 3 review. Lionel Strong, Lord Lionel Strong. Now in the books, he plays a very interesting character where, as I said in episode 1, where everyone thinks he's a bit of a doofus. But what Viserys is asking him for here is an impartial opinion, and it's interesting that Lionel Strong, and there's an interesting fact about Lionel Strong, and I'll get onto that after. It's interesting that Lionel Strong basically outlines all of the pros for marrying Laena Velaryon, and the only thing that Viserys says is the con is that she's 12. Now, whilst there's one against many positives, i.e. politically and the strength of the house and the strength of the bloodline, because bear in mind, the Valyrian bloodline is of Valyria, which is the same place as the Targaryens were they're both from families from old Valyria. But it seems that Viserys is very, very uncomfortable about the fact that Laena's so young. Now, it's interesting that he's gone to Lionel Strong for an impartial opinion here and advice, where he's also had that same conversation with Otto and Melos, and they seem to be more closer to him sort of politically. So it's interesting that he's asking for a third opinion here. But it's clear that he needs additional counsel, and he wants it out of the he wants this out of sight and ear of Otto and Melos. But this is them just discussing the pros and cons of the options for marriage. Now, this is the scene that I thought was probably the best from this episode. And again, I think because of the dinner scene between the two, I think they broke bread, Rhaenyra and Viserys. And it's interesting that they have quite a heated conversation, and we'll get to that, about her going on Dragon back to Dragonstone. But I think she kind of gets one up. Now, this is where it gets a bit heated, because he's a bit infuriating by the fact that she went. She could have been hurt. Viserys didn't know Daemon's intentions, and she's the heir. And that's the critical part here, is that she's the only heir at the moment, and she's doing all of these lackluster, like dangerous, risky, political moves. And yet she's the only heir for him, so of course he's going to be infuriating. But she gets one over on Viserys by saying, well, I got the egg back and I took it by using a dragon, so my plan worked. And you can clearly see here that he likes the fact that she got it done. She got it done using her own plan, and it breaks the bread there. It goes from quite a tense moment where he's quite fearful for her to to quite a light-hearted scene where they talk about the heir, like the whole situation about the heir, her being the heir. I think they bring up Queen Emma as well, and the baby. They also bring up the fact that Rhaenyra knows he's got to remarry, and she's comfortable with him remarrying because that's his duty. But again, it's quite a sweet, scene between them, and it clearly shows them now starting to bond and have a conversation and be there for one another since the death of Rhaenyra's mother. Yeah, it's a lot more light-hearted, and again, it gets a bit emotional between them because they're starting to make amends and be there for one another, I think. There's no talk about Alicent, though, and the conversations that Viserys has with Alicent. That's still kept under wraps there. Now, the bombshell here, which probably is more obvious to us as the audience as opposed to it is all of these political players. But the king's obviously called a small council. All of the main players are there. And interestingly enough, although she hasn't been to any of the others, and we'll get to it, for some reason, Alicent Hightower's here. And if that wasn't obvious to these, I don't know who. I don't know. It just baffled me that they didn't pick up the clues here. But I guess because we've seen that relationship develop with Viserys and Alicent, it's more obvious to us that this is the decision that's going to be made, and he's going to snub Corlys and Laena and Corlys's offer of bringing them families closer together. But this particular part, that's where he declares that it's going to be Alicent that he marries next. Oh, then that just infuriates everything. Well, you can see she's messing with her fingernails again, and she's as shocked as everyone else. Corlys is absolutely infuriated, and he's a disgrace. He thinks it's a disgrace, and looks over at Alicent. I mean, Alicent is just a pawn in all this, really, and the poor thing. She's just a piece on the chessboard on the Game of Thrones. Now, this is where I think, because of the dynamic of the relationship between Rhaenyra and Alicent, and is different in the books, it just makes this scene just so much better. So much better, the fact that they're best friends. And you can tell that Rhaenyra is absolutely distraught. And didn't know none the wiser about any of the conversations that Alicent and Viserys have had, none of the relationship that they've developed, and he's probably clueless as to why he's picking Alicent over anyone else, really. But you can tell she just storms off with, and prior to that, Corlys stormed off as well, so I wonder where he's going. And we find out, straight away where he's going. Now, this is a great scene because Corlys makes a great speech, actually, about the bloodline being passed down to him, the Valyrian bloodline being passed down to him, and him having to create the strength of their house off his own back through all his hard work, and the fact that he was never in line to take the Valyrian crown. He was the second brother, like Daemon was, which is a great transition into the conversation that they had, that they have now, about them both being second brothers, both being arguably second choice, and that they've got to take what they want by force, basically. And the premise of the scene concludes with Daemon and Corlys teaming up, arguably for the next episode, to fight the crab feeder, the crab man. So hopefully we're going to see some battling in the next episode, which is actually quite different to how Game of Thrones usually used to play this. It was usually episodes 9 and 9, that was the big battle or the big event, and then 10 there was always quite a big conclusion as well to the season. But it's a great speech by Corlys, and I know Daemon's got a lot to say about it as well, and he wants to get his own back from the whole dragon egg situation. So it's interesting that, and we've got a great shot of the crab feeder there. But it's interesting that that both of the kind of second brothers, shall we say, are going to team up by the looks of it in the next episode. And yeah, another couple of shots of the crab feeder. Now, before we finish the review, from what I've read and heard, the crab feeder has not only got grayscale, which we saw Jorah Mormont have grayscale in the latter seasons of Game of Thrones, but the crab feeder's mask is made up of stuff that he's just picked up on the shore, and he's a bit of a scavenger, really, so he should be an interesting character in the next episode. And that's it. Yeah, I mean, like I said, not much happened in this episode. It was quite slow, but it was a typical Game of Thrones episode, very political, very strategic, a lot of plot points moving forward, and it sets it up nicely for the episode to come, potentially the next marriage, the relationship between Alicent and Viserys. Unsure how they're going to play like the time skip with maybe potentially a new baby, along with the relatively immediate threat of the crab feeder and that battle with Corlys plus Daemon versus the crab feeder. So we'll see what that's like in episode 3. But hope you liked the review. If you did, consider dropping a like or a comment, and subscribe to the channel if you're enjoying the content. And yeah, look out for more. Thanks again. Cheers. Take care.